Hey, welcome to the Micheaux Mission, Two Men, One Podcast, every black film ever made. My name is Len, aka the Bat Tribble, and as always, I'm joined by my partner.
Hey, this is Vincent Williams.
Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are very, very proud to bring you another entry in the long filmography of one and dearly departed Cicely Tyson as
yes.
Vincent brings to the mission 1981's Bustin Loose, starring Richard Pryor along with Ms. Tyson and directed by Scott, or was that Michael Schultz? We shall see. We shall see. But before we get into any of that, ladies and gentlemen, as always, we want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you that are out there watching us as we are streaming live on YouTube as well as on Facebook. And I see you all in the chat saying hello to everyone, to each of us, as well as to each other. Robert Monroe, Aaron Fry, Bree 517, Deborah Battle. I see each and every one of you out there. Hello,
what's going on, folks? Good evening. Good evening.
All righty. Vince, how are you doing, my good friend?
I am fine. Enjoying the weather. I'm not going to get pulled in and say spring is sprung, but I am enjoying the weather. Feeling good. And yourself?
I cannot complain. At all. We have letters, Vince.
Oh, always so nice. They're like little gifts every week.
We have correspondence from our listeners. This email comes from Daria Benson in regards to our review of Mudbound.
Oh, hey, Daria.
Like you, Vince, I was reluctant to see this film. Thank you, Len, for the selection. While your review encouraged me to finally watch, it was even more. All the performances were outstanding, the screenplay had many levels, and the direction superb. Thank you again for your mission.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for listening and reinforce her reinforcement of what I said. I'm so happy that you chose that, Lynn. Because, again, I never would have watched it.
I know. So. In regards to our review of Mudbound, we also heard from Deuce Brown on Instagram, who
What's up, Deuce Brown?
Let us know it's great to hear you guys give Jason Clarke his due. I've appreciated his acting nuance since his role as John Red Hamilton in Johnny Depp's Public Enemies. He dies really good.
Yeah, he's one of those great character actors. You know, we love the character actors.
Yeah.
And he's very much one of those. Wasn't he in something, guys? But he was fantastic.
I enjoyed him in speaking of that, there was a Western, Winchester, that he was very good in. And he was also excellent in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
And that's where I recognize him from most recently. And like you said, he was very good in that.
Yeah. Good actor.
In a role that didn't necessarily need the nuance.
Exactly. Yeah, you could have easily, like
nobody is really there for the character work. We're there for monkeys on horses.
Yes.
Which was part of the early ad campaign. I don't know if that made it to print.
Very true.
Planet of the Apes. Monkeys on horses.
I mean, when it showed up in the trailer, that sold it. The trailer could have just been that, and I'd have been like, I'm there. I am there.
I'm a Planet of the Apes dude. So like the original Planet Apes with the apes on horses.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing you really see in the Charlton Heston one. Yep. That lets you know, oh, this is wild right here. That monkey's on a horse.
Now, you are a huge Planet of the Apes fan, and maybe we've covered this before in the mission, so forgive me. But were you a fan of the prequel trilogy from the past few years?
I am. I
Yeah.
am. I really am. Like I thought it was remarkably well done. Again, better than it had any right to be.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you know, I'm also a fan of that bonkers Tim Burton one.
Really?
It's not good. It's not good.
No, it's not.
But it's so bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most bizarre, and it's from that wonderful period that has sort of petered out, where Tim Burton kept getting these huge budgets for his fever dreams.
Yeah.
Like somebody was like, I mean, I guess we got to give Tim Burton a big budget. And then Tim Burton made like 4 or 5 really bizarre films. And Planet of the Apes was very much one of them.
Yeah. I can't help but think about that movie. I don't know if you know this story. Do you remember the controversy with Marky Mark in regards in some comments he made about Helen Bonham Carter in that movie?
Vaguely. Remind me.
He was appearing on Howard Stern at the time of the film to promote the film. And, you know, they were going on about the makeup work on, you know, on the monkeys.
I remember this.
And Helen Bonham Carter plays one of the monkeys in the movie. And Mark Wahlberg, you know, says that, you know, oh, she looked amazing. She looked amazing in the costume, in the monkey suit. Oh my God, she looked just like Janet Jackson.
Yeah.
That was that did not go over well.
Right. It's the type of thing that Mark Wahlberg doesn't like us to remember.
No.
But the North remembers.
See what you did there. I like that, my friend. Thank you very much. And we, like each and every one of you, thank you, all of you that emails us at micheauxmission@gmail.com. Thank you, each and every one. We like that. Speaking of monkeys, Vince.
Where's this transition going?
I'll tell you exactly where it's going. It's going to the theater because this week, actually tomorrow.
I was about to say tomorrow.
Premiering in theaters as well as, I believe, on HBO Max. Godzilla versus King Kong.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I cannot wait. And here's why I cannot wait. I am a loyal subscriber to HBO Max. I enjoy HBO Max. I watch something on it almost every weekend.
Okay.
And I will dutifully watch Godzilla versus King Kong on HBO Max, but not this weekend. Because this weekend, on Friday, I am going to the drive-in here in Philadelphia at the Navy Yard to watch Godzilla versus King Kong the way it is meant to be seen.
Nice. I'm learning right now in real time that is it playing all weekend?
Yes.
Huh.
It is playing all weekend. I am going to the 8 p.m. show on Friday at the Navy Yard to see Godzilla versus King Kong on the huge drive-in screen.
Interesting. How's that work? So you had to buy tickets already?
I bought those tickets this afternoon, my friend.
Interesting. So it might be sold out.
You know, I got a funny feeling it's not sold out. Because,
That's very interesting. What else is playing?
I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care. I don't care. I have absolutely no care. It's Godzilla versus King Kong. There is no, I cannot watch that film on my TV. I have a nice sized TV. I don't want to, the first time I watch that film, I want it to be on a huge screen.
That's fair. That is fair. Well, if somehow I go this weekend, I'm probably going to watch it before then, but that's fair.
Oh my God. You know, it's already premiered overseas and it's made $130 million over there.
Look, man, look, you already tried to pull me. You know what? I'm going to let y'all see how the sausage is made.
Here we go.
Len Webb gave me the heads up before we started. Yo, we got kind of time constraints. We're going to try and hit this time. And I said, we can do this. We one take Len, one take Vince when we need to be. And then we start. You get all these people in here. You start with Planet of Apes. Then you go into Godzilla. What do you want from me, man? Like, hey, Len, when this is over, you want to talk about 70s jazz funk that Blue Note made? Hey, Vince, you know what I was also listening to? Some Bobby Hutcherson. Like, that's what you would do that too? like I'm trying to stay on course.
I know. Robert Monroe let me know that Godzilla versus King Kong is playing at the drive-in. Unfortunately, it's a double feature with Tom and Jerry.
Well,
now,
then you can go get snacks.
I can't get an hour and a half worth of snacks, but then I'll be asleep when Godzilla versus King Kong comes on. But I actually heard good things about Tom and Jerry, so I won't mind. I'll sit and watch it.
All right.
What the heck? Anyway. So speaking of back on track, Vincent, I put an article from the Hollywood Reporter. I actually put it in the Facebook group for all of you to check out. There was a really cool article about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier that was in the Facebook feed. I mean, from the Hollywood Reporter. And the article talks about how Falcon and the Winter Soldier uncovers Marvel's original sin. And that being the legacy of one Isaiah Bradley, some would say, the second Captain America.
Yeah, because they've
kind of like reworked things.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
Yeah. So if for spoiler alert for those who did not watch last week's episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney Plus, which it's an excellent series. I'm actually really enjoying
Malcolm Spellman is killing it.
The second episode, which is titled The Star-Spangled Man, in there, Bucky reveals to Falcon, Sam, a secret, one that he kept from Steve Rogers, that America had another secret super soldier that it used and later abused during the Korean War, one Isaiah Bradley. And if the name is not a clue to you, Isaiah Bradley is a black man. He was first introduced in the Marvel Comics back in 2003 in the miniseries Truth, Red, White, and Black, which was written by the late Robert Morales and illustrated by Kyle Baker. Within that book, it was revealed that Steve Rogers was not the first or only soldier to undergo Project Rebirth. The U.S. government experimented on 300 black soldiers in an attempt to recreate the super soldier serum in 1942. And when the government, they ultimately, one of those soldiers being Isaiah Bradley, who, as the last soldier to survive those experiments, became the government's weapon, facing all the obstacles, but receiving none of the glory that Steve Rogers received. Truth was a heralded and very controversial,
very controversial
miniseries when it was released in 2003 because of this reimagining of not necessarily Captain America's origin, but Captain America relationship with America and the Marvel Universe's relationship with Black America. And because of some of the hard questions that book posed, the book was allowed to basically fade away from consciousness. It has not ever been reprinted. Now, the characters from that book, Isaiah Bradley, and then subsequently his son, his son is
Josiah X.
Josiah X, right?
Remember, he was a Muslim.
Right. And then Josiah's son, Isaiah's grandson, they eventually did work their way into be mentioned into the Marvel Universe, and they kind of like tweaked his story a little bit since then.
Yeah.
And this was the first mentioning of the character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that, and just, you know, some of the hard questions that this series asks of a Black man's role in this universe really makes for some interesting television being produced on Disney+.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I applaud Malcolm Spellman. I applaud. When I heard his name, when he walked in and said, you know, Isaiah Bradley, you could hear the gasp of Black nerds throughout America.
Yeah.
Because it really was this, you know, it was that weird, not to get too inside baseball-y, but it was part of that Marvel Knights moment where Joe Quesada, I always mispronounce his last name, Joe Quesada really gave these writers free reign to do this really interesting stuff. And like you said, Robert Morales made it, and they retconned it immediately, because I believe in the original miniseries, Isaiah Bradley was first.
Yeah, see, that's what I remember too.
It was, and obviously it alluded to the Tuskegee experiment and all of the medical crimes that have been committed against Black people since slavery. And when they perfected it with Isaiah Bradley, then they brought Steve Rogers in. And as you said, immediately they retconned it.
Yeah.
So that they said that they tried to duplicate it after Steve Rogers. And then, as you said, they stopped talking about it.
Yeah, for a long time.
Talking about it. And it's funny. So, you know, me and my boys, we, you know, it's like my crew, and two of us are like the comic dudes. So we, you know, when we watch the Marvel stuff, we basically become like LeVar Burton at the end of reading Rainbow. Like, if you like WandaVision, you should read the Vision miniseries by Tom King. Like, you know, and I said, oh yeah, blah, 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 you should read Truth. Because, you know, I got my copy. So I said, you know, go get Truth. And then discovered, not only is it out of print, it's been out of print.
It's been out of print.
It's available digitally. Like you know, on the Marvel Unlimited app, and like you can download it to your Kindle. But Marvel, I mean, it was crazy as soon as it came out. It was controversial. And I am, you know, you always feel weird applauding Disney, like this huge behemoth. But it really is, again and again, Disney gives these creators space to do their, you know, whether we're talking about Black Panther, whether we're talking about WandaVision, whether we're, you know, where these creators have this space to work. And again, I have to say, as somebody who read the Sam Wilson Captain America comics, when he was Captain America for like 2-3 years in the comics, and they never really dealt with this the way just these past 2 episodes are already kind of revving up, and then pulling in Isaiah Bradley. This is really, really good stuff.
Now, when you say that they didn't really deal with this, are you speaking of specifically in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where Sam Wilson the Anthony Mackie character, for people that don't know, the Falcon, he gave up the shield.
Right.
One, because, you know, as far as in his mind, the government was saying like, hey, we want to use it as a symbol for this museum or whatever.
Yeah.
But also he was giving it up because he recognized what it would mean for him, a black man, to be Captain America.
Exactly.
And all of the troubles that you know, that would bring upon him. And was that never a part of really questioned in the Falcon book? Because I didn't read
Len, you know how this works. Periodically, they replace the real character with the replacement character.
Right.
And, you know, it's more than but and then a lot of it is, oh, I'll never live up to the legend of fill in the blank. But it's not racial.
Okay, they didn't go.
I'm just the replacement. No one's ever going to look at me like the real, you know, intellectual property man. Right. But blah blah blah, and then you go for 18 months, and then, you know, now he's back, better than ever.
Right.
I don't recall, and the fact that I don't recall, I think is telling, because I pay attention to this stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't recall anything outside of the, oh, no one will ever respect me as much as they did the original type of hand wringing.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas already in these two episodes, whether we're talking about the bank loan situation, whether we're talking about that wonderful scene with the police, whether we're talking about the amazingly loaded conversation between Rhodey and Sam Wilson.
Right.
That wasn't, you know, and again, he was, you know, for like 2 years, he was like Captain America. And I don't remember anything really. Level. Right. So
okay. Deborah Brattle in the chat is shouting out Carl Lumbly for his portrayal of Isaiah Bradley. And yes, because he wears the scars of that character all over his face. He definitely does. Deborah says that she met Carl Lumbly in 1984 when he came to her high school with Morgan Freeman and Robert Earl Jones, father of James. They were there doing gospel at the Kennedy Center. Carl Lumbly actually was a guest on the Black Tribbles show some time ago. We talked to him about being, of course, this was before Isaiah Bradley. So we talked to him about, you know, being Manimal and
Mantis, not Manimal.
Mantis, like Mantis. That's right, Mantis. Talked about Mantis and talked about his voice work as John Jones on the Justice League animated series. And he told us a very cool story about how he always wanted to wear sneakers as a little kid, but his parents wouldn't let him wear sneakers. Like, they wouldn't let him wear sneakers. They barely let him wear jeans. And he was just a real big nerd. And he was talking about how he had never really talked about how he was a nerd, but he's been outed out on the Black Tribbles as a nerd. And then he took the oath, and now he's Jones Tribble in Tribble Nation.
And that's a wonderful story. And then, not to be too inside baseball-y, even more in geeky, but certainly the meta casting of Carl Lumbly as a early black superhero that was done wrong, in my mind, is a direct reference to what happened with Mantis.
Yeah, because that show did not last at all.
It did not last. And remember, they jacked it all up trying to bring in a whiter audience.
I don't remember that at all.
Oh my God. You know, of course you do, because you know this is one of my nerd rage things.
Here we go.
Remember, Mantis came on, it was like the movie, and it was like blue, black. It was like Mantis, and he had these two African assistants who may have as well have been from Wakanda. Like they were super scientists, but it was like they were actually Afrofuturistic, and it was just blackity black.
That's right. And they kind of like wrote them out.
They wrote them out, revamped it, and then there was a cool, edgy white kid with a backwards baseball cap and a skateboard, and they took all the racial markers out of it, which then made it whack. Yeah, and it got canceled immediately.
I do remember that, and as a matter of fact, you bringing that up, it reminded me he did touch on that in the interview. Yeah, it was pretty cool, pretty dope. So. Robert Moreau Jr. says that the cop scene reminded him of a version of the joke, "What do you call a black man who's a superhero?"
That's right. That's right.
Black man. All right. So there you go. Looking at the time, it's a good time for us to get into our review, Vince.
All right.
Let's get into our review of Bustin Loose. But first, it's time for trailer talk. This is when Vince and I have a little bit of a conversation about, whatever that will be edited out of the podcast because this is where the trailer will be plopped in. But as Vince has mentioned earlier, we are on a tight schedule tonight. So hope you enjoyed trailer talk.
And this has been trailer talk.
But I will also say, here you go. Blue Girl 718 said, I loved Mantis.
Yeah, Mantis was fantastic. Way ahead of its time.
Mantis, and I believe you can get like the DVD.
It's around.
Series. Yeah,
it's around.
For long, unfortunately. All right. Let's get into our review. I feel bad I had to start the review without Miss Makiba. She didn't chime in yet. She's going to be upset.
She's here in spirit.
She's here in spirit. Nobody tell her when she signs up in the chat. Yeah, don't tell her we started when she signs up in here.
What are you talking about? All right.
Ready?
I am ready.
Bustin Loose, a 1981 American comedy drama directed by Oz Scott with uncredited directorial chops by Michael Schultz, stars Richard Pryor, Cicely Tyson in this comedy that tells the story of a director of a foster home who is forced to move her kids from Philadelphia to Seattle in a broken down bus driven by a fast-talking parolee assigned to the task. This film was Vincent's selection for this stop on the Micheaux mission. Vincent, what say you of Bustin Loose?
Well, everything I'm about to say you should take with a grain of salt because Bustin Loose is bulletproof with me. And it is impossible for me to be objective with this film. And if we have time, as we said, we were under a tight schedule, so we'll see how things go. At some point, I will regale you all with the saga of Vince in the Bustin Loose soundtrack. But needless to say, I have a really difficult time having a cold, detached eye with this film. Having said that, I think this film is okay. I think this film is okay. And I think this film certainly serves the purpose that I wanted it to on this show, which was to highlight Cicely Tyson. And as an actress and as a person. This story of this director of this of this group home with these kids, an orphanage basically, and she gets permission or she moves some paperwork around because that's a little unclear actually, where she takes these 8 kids across the country who all have really deep set problems, and she's going to raise them on a farm in Seattle, and her boyfriend, who is a probation officer, blackmails one of his clients, played by Richard Pryor, to drive the bus. The plot is preposterous. The plot makes absolutely no sense, and this plot is so preposterous that there's never been one moment that I've watched this film, like even when I was 11, 12, and I said, this makes no sense whatsoever as a plot. But once you get past that, like if you are able to suspend your disbelief about this plot, which in all fairness, I do think moving into the 80s, this was not the only film during the 80s that had this sort of bananas plot that audiences were asked to accept and then go along with the ride. There are big chunks of this film that I like. There are big chunks of this film that I like. First, I like the kids in this film because the kids are jerks. these are like kids. And I think that the performances across the board, you understand that these are really annoying kids.
Mm-hmm.
And these are kids that get on your nerves. And I think that's hard to pull off. We've talked about it before with a few of these films. Child actors being able to capture that alchemy
mm-hmm.
of kids being annoying and you know, like kids are assholes.
Yeah.
And yet there's something about kids that make you love them. And it's this really, really thin line
mm-hmm.
that I think a lot of these actors, these young actors, are able to carry off. Not only are they jerks, but you know, there's some real, like some of these kids have real issues.
Well, that's the whole idea. They are troubled kids. So.
Right, but it's not like movie troubled kids, like, you know, a Johnny Depp type sitting in you know, he's got like a plaid shirt that he tore the sleeves off.
Right.
Like one of these kids was a paramedic. Like he accidentally killed his parents.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is a pretty unflinching look at a young woman who has been sexually assaulted since she was a child.
Oh yes, in the young in Annie.
And Annie and dealing with Annie, like this is not something that really pulls punches. It's a kid who's blind and kind of navigating blindness. And I thought it was striking that they showed him with no glasses on. I don't know if the actor was actually blind, but it is striking.
Mm-hmm.
I really like Cicely Tyson's role in this film. Like I like that Cicely Tyson is a lady. Like she's actually a lady. Like she has this costuming detail where she always wears white gloves.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, she's very proper, but she's very sort of formidable. What I put in my book, in my notes, is that in 1981, she's giving you Claire Huxtable energy 4 years before Claire Huxtable is on the Cosby Show.
Okay.
And not to put too fine of a point on it, I think it is significant that this role is played by Cicely Tyson, a darker skinned Black actress. Frankly, women who look like Cicely Tyson don't get to play roles like this.
The leading romantic lead.
I mean, she has two suitors. Mm-hmm. She has two suitors. And again, this is not somebody who basically everyone is in love with her because of quote unquote how strong she is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She is delicate. She is a lady. Like I said, you're not going to speak a certain way in front of me. I don't like you smoking. I wear these gloves. So I love that just as an image.
Gotcha.
Richard Pryor, you know, look, we've talked about Richard Pryor, and I think this is 1981. I think he is better in this film than he is in some of his later films. I don't think he's as good in this film as he is in films that came before this, frankly. But I actually like Richard Pryor with kids. And it's something that you don't see that often. Like they're talking about quick shows. Like if you ever saw episodes of Pryor's Place.
Yeah, his Saturday morning show.
The Saturday morning show he had for like 4 episodes. But I like Richard Pryor with kids because there's a softness and this kind of sweetness and vulnerability that Richard Pryor has. That when he's with kids and it clicks, it clicks really well. Like the aforementioned character Annie. There's a wonderful scene with Annie where Annie is showing affection the only way she's known how, because she's been sexually assaulted her whole life. And this is the only way she knows to show men that she likes them. And Richard Pryor is gruff and sort of like he you know, you don't do this and this, that, and the other. But there's this real concern underneath that he shows with her. And it's paralleled in a few other scenes with these kids. Like at the end, he kind of, you know, y'all aren't losers and this, that, and the other.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I like that. Like, I like Richard Pryor at that speed. The same time, I actually kind of liked him and Cicely Tyson together. Like I said, I like Cicely Tyson as the love interest. But
and
Richard...
Deborah Battle, real quick, just points out how Cicely Tyson was actually in her mid-50s when she made this film.
Look, I never go down that road, how old these, like, you know, these black don't crack. These people 80, 90, 100 years old, sure. You know, but it works. You know, it works. And I like that. You know, the film falls apart basically the last half hour. Like, it's a road trip film. You see where, you see where the things are going. It's a very comfortable rhythm. It's an hour. They're on the bus. I don't really have much to say about the direction. Like, it's breezy. You know, the thing moves along. Last half hour, they throw in a monkey wrench about they need some money to save the farm. Like, they literally need to save the farm.
Right.
And it kind of falls apart, like, for the last 20 minutes. And the tone changes, and suddenly it's madcap, and it's almost like it's a different movie. And I can't really defend that, although I will say I kind of like Cicely Tyson in those scenes. Like you don't get to see funny Cicely Tyson ever.
That's true.
So, like, you know, there's a scene in a warehouse, and they're pretending to be mannequins, and it's like, oh, that's something you never see that much. So that, you know, at the end of the day, like I said, I love this movie for a bunch of reasons that have nothing to do with the movie itself or the quality of the movie. But having said that, as a movie, I thought it was all right. I mean, I thought it was all right.
Well, allow me to welcome you, Vince, to the show within the show that I like to call Len Stomps on Your Childhood.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
When I saw this movie way back when it first came out, and I, just like Robert Monroe Jr., who mentioned earlier in the chat, saw this movie. It wasn't at a drive-in theater, but I definitely saw it at the local black theater when I saw this movie when I was a kid. And I remember kind of like just liking it. But I was a 14, 15-year-old kid. I'm just watching a Richard Pryor movie. He's cursing a couple of times in it. I don't even necessarily know if I recognize Cicely Tyson as the woman, as an actress from anything else that I had seen. I think Miss Jane Pittman had already played. So I don't know if I necessarily recognized her from that. But I remember just like, oh, okay, it's cool. You know, it's cool. It was like a dumb little movie. It on a Saturday afternoon, probably when I saw it. It fit the bill, and it likely played before a Sonny Chiba movie at the movie theater, and that's what I was really waiting for. So it was all right. So to be fair, this may be the first time that I've seen this film since then. At least it's the first time that I remember seeing the entire film since then. So I tried to watch it through those 14-year-old eyes, but I can't, because I just found myself just sitting there lifeless the entire time while I was watching this movie. We're not going to talk about the direction too much. Even though it is strikingly different from some scenes between one another, and that is because, as you know, when you do your research, you learn that this film was made in 1979, It was, and it was a Richard Pryor production. He wrote the story. He didn't write the script, but he wrote the story. And you got to imagine this story was probably 2 pages. Then he had a script that was made from there, and then he produced the movie, right? And it was filmed, but it didn't go over well with Warner Brothers. So they were going to try and do some reshoots. And that's when they brought in Micheaux, who worked with Richard Pryor on some of his best films.
Right.
Had a good relationship with Richard. So they brought in Micheaux to reshoot some scenes and shoot some extra scenes for the movie. However, Richard Pryor was on his way. He had started Stir Crazy with Gene Wilder. He filmed that movie. Then after that movie, Richard Pryor famously has a huge accident where he almost kills himself and is on the mend for close to a year. So they don't return to this film until late 1980, early 1981 to do the refilming. And those scenes, which are more of the slapstick scenes that happen at the end, the big scheme where he's dressed up as the cowboy and everything like that, have a completely different energy than the rest of the movie. So they try to liven up the film from what they show is pretty much a flat performance by Richard Pryor. We have mentioned before that in a lot of Richard Pryor's earlier films, especially when he is more the seasoning on a movie, that he's shown a great bit of nuance as an actor. We all know that he can do funny, but he's shown that he can actually play the drama or seriousness of a scene if he is directed to do so. Left to his own devices, however, Richard Pryor just falls back on the, all shucks, fumbling, mumbling, oh golly me, whatever type of characterization that is working hard to evoke some type of emotion, pull some type of emotion for you. But to me, it just felt desperate and grabbing and just cloying and just annoying. I didn't think that he had any chemistry with Cicely Tyson. Cicely Tyson, I didn't think they had any chemistry. I'm not knocking Cicely Tyson. I don't think she's given what she's given to do. She does the most with, but I don't think I don't think the script is all that well written. So she's not given a whole lot of lines to really work with. So she's just being her, and she's doing her best. The kids, you can tell that they are. This is they didn't do some worldwide search for the greatest children's actors. So they're doing their part. I'm not going to knock them. They're kids, right? But the scenes that you talk about, and I've seen a couple of other people talk about, where it's them and Richard Pryor. It's nothing to me. Like they do not get over to me at all. They do not. I don't feel it. I feel that a lot of the acting in this movie by some of the adults is one of two speeds. They're either or they're screaming at each other. There's like no middle ground. The only one that shows really any middle ground is Cicely Tyson to me. Like Richard Pryor is all just fumbling, mumbling, whatever, or trying to be like shucking and jiving, and every time whatever he's doing, it sounds like he's just trying too hard. It just does not come across as real to me. And I think part of that is because he pointedly was trying to do a switch up of his image. He was trying to begin. This is the first film that begins his trek of trying to do more family-friendly fare. There is some swearing in this movie, and like you said, there's commentary on that from the Cicely Tyson character. But for the most part, he is on what would now be called PG-13 mode in this movie. And I don't think well, to be fair, I don't think Richard ever really mastered this switch, but in this his first attempt of it, it's really just not there because I don't think he knows which way to go. I think he's fighting against his normal instincts in this movie. That coupled with a movie that, like we've already said, is a by the numbers script. Just let's get them on the road and hijinks ensue, and then they get to what should be the end of the movie, but they realize but there's not much story there.
Right.
Now all of a sudden,
an hour.
right? Now all of a sudden, like yes, the promised land that we have reached. But there's a bill due. So I'm like what? All of a sudden, they driven across country from Philadelphia to Seattle, and yet dude is right on their butt at every single time. Like that doesn't even make any type of sense, right? Like so, because there's that, he doesn't have much to work with, and it just really tries very hard to come together. And like the proof that this film is unsure of exactly what it wants to be. There is a scene where Richard Pryor is walking down the street in the middle of the dark, and the Ku Klux Klan comes up upon him. Yeah. Now, the second you see the Ku Klux Klan walk up on Richard Pryor, everybody is sitting at the edge of their seats because, oh man, this is going to be good. Whatever happens from this should be good. A big comic piece in this film, and it is flat.
You're saying it's flat. They don't actually show the money shot of him convincing the Ku Klux Klan to come help.
Exactly. They don't do that. And then when the moment of supposed comeuppance, when the Ku Klux Klan helps to push this stuck bus out of the mud, and they get all the mud thrown up on them, you're waiting for, okay, well, there's going to be at least some great line right here.
Right.
And the Ku Klux Klan guy's like, I don't think we should tell anybody about this.
Yeah.
It's just, and to me, that is endemic of the entire exercise of this film. It is just, unfortunately for Richard, for what he was trying to do, and unfortunately because of his lifestyle, it was destined to be, it was a failed experiment, and nothing of it comes together. I hear you for championing this for the image of Cicely Tyson that it presents, but I unfortunately feel that her efforts are wasted in this film.
Well, like I said, I can't argue with you, but so much. I do think, again, if we both agree that the last half hour it goes off the rails, we only have an hour to work with. Like there's only an hour that we can even debate. And to your energy critique, I will also grant you, I actually thought it was snappier the first 15, 20 minutes before he gets on the bus. Like when you see Joe Braxton as this sort of low-level criminal, kind of, there's the first scene with him and Paul Mooney, which I've always kind of had fondness for. And then, even when he's in and out, the court scene. And yeah, I can't really fight with you that much. Again, I'm like the blinders I have for this film.
I feel you
are remarkable. But again, regardless, I do think just as, and you kind of tipped your hand and said it when you were talking, like that you didn't even recognize Cicely Tyson. Like this is a role that Cicely Tyson, it seemed, at least to my knowledge, very rarely got to play.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
always in period pieces. she's like barefoot and it's a rag on her head and she's very strong and noble.
Yes,
and just again, Cicely Tyson at this speed is a speed that I think is worth kind of putting up on a shelf. Yeah. Like I always think of this and Sounder. Even in Sounder, Sounder is one of them dirt road barefoot movies. But Paul Winfield loves him some Cicely Tyson. And so, but hey, look, I can't fight you. I'm all about the soundtrack.
Speaking of the soundtrack, let's take the pin out of your story.
Are we finished? Are we finished with the review?
I believe we have reached the climax of
Go
the
ahead.
review.
You ask me.
Would you, Vincent, recommend people watch Bustin Loose?
I actually would, for the reasons that I've mentioned. And unlike you, I like Richard Pryor with the kids, and I also like Cicely Tyson. But it's a real soft yes. It's a real soft yes. It's about a C+.
I want to rock with you with the Richard Pryor and the kids things, but the only two films that I can think of that fit that criteria would be this and The Toy, and I can't stand The Toy.
Well, yeah, but compare right, but that's
okay. Compared to this, The Toy is Citizen Kane, but that's still being said. I can't recommend that you watch Bustin' Loose. If you want to see Richard Pryor in true for the kids mode, go get the DVD of Pryor's Place.
All right.
There you go. So now.
There you go. There's our review. I now give you the saga of Vince and the.
Oh, wait a minute. Before you do, and I'll edit this. Okay. Miss Makiba, who with Nerd Rage signed on late into our review, points out that my 12-year-old son's only comment after this film was Cicely Tyson looks like the mom on Mixed-ish. He was not all that impressed.
From the mouths of babes.
Yes. Yes. Now.
The year was 1994. Had a little job out of college, had an internship my senior year, had turned into a job. In retrospect, it wasn't a bad job. I was like a research assistant at a PR firm for nonprofits, basically, kind of help these hippies not look like terrorists. No, that was actually the job. Like, that was actually the job. Like, people thought these people were terrorists. It's like, no, maybe, do something with your hair and you won't look so crazy. But I was a young man and it was a job and it was like just office politicky stuff. And I said I didn't want to do it anymore. And then the hubris and arrogance of somebody who lived with their parents, because I moved back in after I graduated and I knew I wasn't going to starve to death, I quit.
Yeah, of course.
My job. Len, it's like that John Romita cover of Spider-Man, where Spider-Man threw his costume in the trash and said, "Spider-Man no more." I literally took my tie off and threw it in the trash can and said, "No more." All right. So I get a job. I've mentioned this before. I used to work at a record store, Record Masters. So I got this job at Record Masters, and I say this without hesitation as a person that we've got this podcast. We are building it. Like, we can't really pay no bills with it, but this is a job. And my day job, people, as my father used to talk about, they pay me to talk to people about Octavia Butler and Langston Hughes. Like, that is my actual job. I say without hesitation that the almost 2 years that I worked at Record Masters was the best job I've ever had in my entire life. So worked at Record Masters, and because it was an independent record store, and we just talked about music all day long. It was me, it was 3 middle-aged white guys, and it was a young white woman who was the daughter of the owner. These demographics are going to be important in a moment. And we would just sit and everything. Like, I learned about rock music and classic music, classical music, and country music. And quietly, my boss, like my godfather, knows more about jazz than anyone I've ever met. But my manager, Mike, was a close second.
Okay.
And we were just sitting there and talk about, like I talked about seeing Yaphet Kotto when Homicide was filming in Baltimore. This was that period, because there was this bagel shop next to us that had this amazing coffee. And we would just drink coffee all day, talk about records, talk about music. Now then, for our younger listeners, you have to understand the purpose of the record store, like the independent record store. The music was a little bit more expensive. You could go to the mall and get stuff cheaper, but the record store was for expertise.
Exactly.
Like, this is the mid to late 90s. There was no internet. There was no nothing. Like, if you had a question, you had to find someone who had the knowledge base. Mm-hmm. So people would come into the record store and they had questions and they would do this and ask this and that and the other. And as the black guy, my job was as, frankly, the black guy. Like, I was the hip hop dude. So you had a hip hop question, you came to me. But remember, this is the 90s.
Right.
So because I was the hip hop dude, I was also the R&B and soul dude.
Of course.
And like I joked about earlier, I was the 70s jazz dude. So like somebody would come in, it's like, yeah, I heard the song. It's like, you know, and I heard it, you know, do 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 do. Like, what is that? Dude? It's like, oh, that's Think Twice. That's Donald Byrd stepping in Tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And you know, as a record store dude, it's like the car salesman.
That's
like
right.
A good car salesman sells you one car, but a great car salesman sells you 10 cars. So
That's
it's
right.
like, yeah. So here's Step Into Tomorrow, but you should also check out Spaces and Places.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we did all day. You know, just sold records, listened to music, learned about music, this, that, and the other. Now that also meant you had to always be learning. Like you are basically researching and learning stuff. And there were two ways that the record store really reinforced that. First were promos. And the promos are just what they sound like. The record companies would send boxes of promotional material to record stores, and we would divvy them out, and you would listen to it. And again, I'm the black guy, so I got all the black stuff. So like, I have promos of like Micheaux Cello's first album, and D'Angelo's first album, and all, you know, like I always like my copy of Old Dirty Bastards, Return to the 36 Chambers, the dirty version. There's a piece, because we would put tape on the stuff, right, and say, okay, well, this is for this guy. This, like, I have a piece of tape, a masking tape across the cover that says Old Dirty Vince, because it was on my pile of CDs. So that was the one way, and that was the above board way. The sort of we didn't talk about it that much way, the way CDs work, because remember, these are CDs. After a while, you were able to return the CDs for credit from the companies. Mm-hmm. And but it was like pennies on a dollar, which you would get in credit. Like, it was more trouble to return it than not. And then you fooled around, that stuff would go out of print. Mm-hmm. And they actually didn't have, I guess, the barcode information anymore. So unofficially, we would go into the CD collections and listen to stuff and take stuff. And that's how I kind of worked my way through all this 70s soul stuff. Like all this, like so many CDs I own, I got them that way. Like, these are sort of out of print. Nobody returned them, but I need to be ready when somebody comes in and asks about, you know, I don't know, like, what's the Marvin Gaye album that he made when he got divorced? He's like, oh, that's Here My Dear. So that's how I really get introduced to Roberta Flack.
Okay.
So like I know who Roberta Flack is, but you know, I'm surrounded by MCs and beat diggers and musicians. No one ever really was talking about Roberta Flack around me. Her first three albums, First Take, Chapter 2, Quiet Fire, I think are some of the greatest soul albums ever made. And when we talk about 70s soul and we talk about Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye and Earth, Wind and Fire and Donny Hathaway, Roberta Flack should absolutely be in that conversation. And this is how I, again, kind of learned about Roberta Flack. So now I'm deep into Roberta Flack and I'm looking for Roberta Flack stuff. But again, this is the wild west of the 90s. Stuff is out of print. You can't find stuff, this, that, and the other. I start looking into Bustin Loose, the soundtrack.
Okay.
This is a Roberta Flack album that you don't really hear about, and she wrote all the music on there, and Luther Vandross is involved. In fact, my favorite Luther Vandross song, You Stop Loving Me, Roberta Flack performed it on the soundtrack before Luther did on his album.
Exactly, yeah.
So this turns into a thing for me. Like, I'm trying to find the Bustin Loose soundtrack. Bustin Loose soundtrack never made it to CD. You know, it's the soundtrack to a movie that nobody really likes that much, and it vanished. So it becomes my grail. Like, I need to find the Bustin Loose soundtrack, and this goes on. You know, this is my thing. I'm looking for the Bustin Loose soundtrack. So time goes on.
Okay.
Get married, go to grad school, become an adult, move to Philly. You know, I'm actually a grown up now. Always love record stores, obviously, because of my experience. I love music, and they're, you know, it's like, you know, Amoeba Music on the West Coast, and like, you know, Dusty Grooves in Chicago, my beloved Soundgarden in Baltimore, here in Philly, the dearly departed Sound of Market. Love these record stores. Whole time I'm doing it, I'm looking for, you know, again, over a decade. I'm looking for Bustin Loose. Meanwhile, my family vacation every other year, go to Martha's Vineyard.
Yes, I know.
Rent a house, eat ice cream, sit on the beach, read a book, go to Martha's Vineyard. Between Edgartown and Vineyard Haven, there's a record store that's about as big as the room that I'm in. And Len, this was the best damn record store. Like it was, like, again, I only went like every other year, but like every other year I would go in there and they would have exactly what I wanted. So, like, you know, here in Philly, when me and Daryl had the radio show, we got into Charles Stepney. Like, we were big into Charles Stepney. Like, we were Charles Stepney dude. And he was a producer in the 70s, and he worked with Earth, Wind and Fire and the Fifth Dimension, and kind of, you know, lots of lush strings. And they called it Champagne Soul. But like, his brainchild was the Rotary Connection.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember that.
You know, the group that Minnie Riperton was in. Albums never sold anything.
Nope.
Low print runs, albums, but, you know, I downloaded the music. Going to Above Ground Records, that was the name of the record store, I find 3 pristine copies of Rotary Connection albums.
Wow.
One year I go, my favorite Wes Anderson movie is The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, which is basically a Jacques Cousteau riff. Right. Like Steve Zissou is a Jacques Cousteau guy. And Mark Mothersbaugh, I think is the composer's name, the dude from Diva, made the incidental music for it. And it's like this really cool electronica music. And when you read interviews with him, he says he based it on the music from Jacques Cousteau. Like, you remember that cool Jacques Cousteau music? Here we are in the lake and we see the fish, and they're like, boop, 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 boop. And it was like it was like flutes and keyboards. Oh, here we look at the tortoises. Wander into Above Ground, it's a collection of the Jacques Cousteau music. So, like, that kind of thing every other year. So, obviously, you see where I'm going with this. About 10 years ago, I'm in there, and we're looking because at this point my nephew's a teenager, Michael, and Mike fashions himself like a young digger, and so we're in there and we're looking for stuff, and I look over, and for you keeping count, 10 years, because even when the internet came, it was hard to find copies. It was never digitized. Len, I go in there, and it's just a copy of Bustin Loose sitting
just there.
It's just there. This beautiful copy. Hand to God. And like I said, I was with Mike. You can ask Mike. I go up to the counter and I asked the dude, I said, yo, are you a ghost? Is this heaven? Like, why is it always exactly what I want right here?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what he peeped me to. So it's Martha's Vineyard. So like I said, me and my family, we just kind of rent a house every other year. But it's like for real rich Black people that own homes on Martha's Vineyard. Like third, fourth generation, like actual people. And the thing that you know and I know, unfortunately, is that what happens when these houses go to the next generation is that people clean them out.
That's right.
So what was happening is that you had all of these people, I mean, not just Black people, obviously, but that's how come like it had like the Rotary connection is there. People would have these albums in their summer homes.
Mm-hmm.
And now, someone has died and now they're cleaning out the house, and above ground was the record store. So he was like this one-stop shop for all of this music.
Wow.
And that's how that's how he always, so last part, the coda to that story. So I get this Bustin Loose soundtrack. At the time I'm in grad school, I don't have a turntable because I vowed to myself I would not buy a turntable until I got my PhD. Like that was just one more distraction that I wasn't going to do. But as soon as I did, and sure enough, like I defended on one day, and like a week later, I got one of them turntables with the USB cord. And the first album that I digitized and put on my iPod was the Bustin Loose soundtrack.
Wow.
So when I think about the music from Bustin Loose, I think about the record store. I think about traveling to all these different places. I think about the record store that may or may not have been owned by an angel. I think about, finishing grad school. Like I think about all that. And it's like pure joy whenever I hear the music from Bustin Loose, which is why I could never, ever judge Bustin Loose. And Bustin Loose is bulletproof. And it is 808.
Well done. Well done. That was a great story, Vincent. That was an excellent, excellent story, man. The power and the timelessness and the time machine that is music. That was really cool. That was really cool.
So there you go.
Thank you for sharing.
Now, with all that, y'all can judge whether or not I'm a good person to listen to about Bustin Loose.
Look. Your mileage may vary, ladies and gentlemen. Go check out Bustin Loose. Why I care. Before we tell you what's coming up next week here on the Micheaux Mission, ladies and gentlemen, we invite you, because we got a very special month coming your way. We invite you all to hit us up. If you have any questions, thoughts, and concerns, you can email us at micheauxmission@gmail.com. Like and follow us on all the social media, Instagram, Twitter. Subscribe on YouTube at Micheaux Mission, and go to the Micheaux Mission website, micheauxmission.com. 2 Men, 1 Podcast, every Black film ever made, where you can subscribe to the Micheaux Mission Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, to find out all the things that is happening here in the world of Micheaux. And while you're at the website, hit swag and check out all of the cool designs that we have coming your way. By way of our good friends at TeePublic. The Micheaux Mission is a proud member of The Podglomerate, thepodglomerate.com, curated podcast for your listening pleasure. Next month is April. And
yes, sir.
A is for Afrofuturism. This is when Vince and I delve into the world of Black science fiction for you, ladies and gentlemen. And we have a month in store for you, and it kicks off with my selection. I am digging not too far in the crates. As a matter of fact, I am just jumping 2 years from Bustin Loose to the year 1983, where director Lizzie Borden, don't let the name fool you, brought us a piece of dystopian LGBTQ delight that she called Born in Flames. This is a Afrofuturistic film that promises to strike deep into the hearts of Vincent and Len next week when we review it here on the Micheaux Mission. All right?
Looking forward to that.
I am as well. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, he's Vincent, I'm Len, and in parting, we say,
we'll see you when it's time to meet again.